conditions. I think it's really going to speak for itself. Once I'm going to let John really get into some of the weeds about it. But we have a current estimated population on our latest population counts of over 330 animals out here. Our management level for this herd management area is, I believe, 119 on our low end to about 179. So we're in excess of quite a few on that end. And looking at the resource conditions here and lack of our native plant communities is one reason why that is showing overgrazing. And these plant communities are very fragile and very sensitive. And of course we all know the lack of moisture that we've gotten in the last few years. So I'm going to let John talk a little bit about the native plant species that should be here, what they should look like in the optimum world, you know. So go ahead, John.
Okay, on the way up, you may have noticed from the road that we drove up on is that road where you can see that one vehicle right now. And the fence from the HMA is actually kind of the gray area, or the darker area, approximately that's where the fence is, where that sagebrush, and then we're thicker, and then there's that kind of light colored area. So the horses don't get between that light colored area and the road. So even though there's a fence along the road, that grass hasn't been grazed, and you may have noticed a lot of the Indian rice grass is about that tall, and there's some needle grass there. There used to be Indian rice grass down here, but I haven't seen that in quite a while. There is still some bunch grass. There's a needle grass, which is probably desert, but without seeds, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell for sure. Yeah, this is desert needle grass, and it's starting to regrow. But when the native bunch grasses are grazed repeatedly, they don't have enough reserves to. They have to grow and put reserves, carbohydrates into the roots to regrow every year. And this should be, at least as tall. And we try to limit the use in the grazed areas with livestock horses to about 50%. And this would have been, you can see the old growth. I mean, this new stuff is growing up, but the dead stuff down here, that would have been severe use, which, if it was a grazing allotment, BLM should have, they're following the regs, removed all the livestock. And so that's, and there should be a lot more. There's very few of these plants. If this was a healthy range, you'd see these plants every few feet, or certainly every 3 or 4 feet. And then there's some bluegrass in here, which is a native grass, but doesn't provide nearly as much forage as the needle grass. And a lot of these range sites here, this is supposed to be the dominant grass, and we usually have to work pretty hard to find it. The bluegrass, which is native, is supposed to be a trace according to the range site descriptions, and in many areas it's dominant. And the real bad thing is a lot of the invasive weeds, which are really difficult, if not impossible, to get rid of, come in disturbed areas. And all we have is a little bit of cheatgrass here. I don't see any right now, but, well, there's some Russian thistle, it looks like. But for the most part, even though this is a disturbed area, it hasn't been invaded by invasive weeds yet.
You've got right here, for example, here you've got tumble mustard, which is everywhere here now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I mean, as far as invasive plants go, it's not great, but it's not as bad as like Medusa head and there's other grasses that once they take hold of, there's no way to reverse that. And does anybody have any questions?
Well, the good news is horses do like meat.
Are there any livestock allowed to graze here?
This could be permitted, but this allotment here hasn't had livestock grazing. It's way up in our files for 20 years.
Grass just tucking out from under that rock, I'd say